We are back and we are speaking to Miss June Gachui, Miss Yummy Music, but so much more than just yummy music, stuff that you guys don't even know about. So I have her on my show to learn about her story, get inspired, learn about intellectual property and what we need to be doing. Those of you who are out there who are creatives, you gotta be watching this. So before I continue on a rant about many things.
All the things.
Yeah, so you went back. Your dad said, look, you know, think about stuff. You made a decision. You went back to university.
Yes.
I
went back and I said, I'm going to have to make this thing work.
Yes.
So I did a couple of things to make myself comfortable, like mentally. I moved out of the dorms because those things were stressing me.
Yeah.
And I got an apartment and I thought, okay, let me make this my space. Let me create a space that makes me happy, that makes me feel like, you know, this school thing is not impossible. And then, you know, branched out and met different people, not just the ones in my classroom, but also the ones who I used to sort of like meet in the library or who were in halls with me, but were doing different courses. So I think I was more open. Bottom line, I went back and I was more open to the experiences that the school and the city would have to offer me. So I started doing a little bit more singing. There were Africa Caribbean societies and they would have like a talent show night and I was like, okay, I'm going for that because I like singing. There was a karaoke thing. I was like, I'm going for that. So things that now always helped restore balance for me. I said look for them, and then between school and this and then it worked.
So there was your tank filler, and then you kind of have energy to go back
and then now also be clever. At least second year now we were able to pick subjects that was the other thing. First year was all mandatory subjects. I was like, what are these things? This was not the law I wanted to do.
Did you do accounting?
No, it was like administrative law, criminal law, civil law. What else did we learn? Property law, like the basic foundational jurisprudence. Oh my gosh, I was like, what are these things?
Do you know, I thought all lawyers have to do some sort of accounting.
I did accounting when I came to the Kenya School of Law.
Oh, I see.
So now, just before you do your bar exams, accounting, obviously, for lawyers was one of the things that we needed to do. And because I know myself and numbers, I went for tuition before I did the course. Then I did the course, and I was like, oh, I know that. Do you want me to help you? I knew that.
Okay,
so I went for tuition
rabbit trail. Let's go back.
Where were we?
so
I've gone back to school.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've gone back to school and things are...
the subjects are a bit better now.
Subjects are better. I'm picking things that I have an interest in. So I picked like things like intellectual property, which I already had sort of like some passion about.
Because you're already an artist.
Yes. And I did a course that was not a legal course, but just like a social... What was it called? I feel like calling it social anthropological something, one of those. Just understanding people and their behaviors in different settings in different regions of the world. And then the rest were just obviously legal courses, but it was a lot more enjoyable. And I participated more. Some of them were seminar based, so it wasn't just lecture, write notes, pray that you remember everything during the exam. It was more like, let's do an exercise, let's discuss in class, and I learned better in those scenarios. And so I looked for courses that allowed me to excel that way.
So how do you, that's where I get confused a little bit. I mean, I'm trying to remind, I remember myself at that age, and I didn't have the presence of mind or self-awareness to make those kinds of decisions for myself. This is how I process. You were so mature. Like, where did that come from?
It came from failing. You know, one of the classes you can get a bad grade. Then you go and ask the teacher, I have to go back to Africa and this grade is not acceptable. So, what options do I have? Because I don't examine well. Like, I'm not at least as I grew more mature, because we don't grow old, we get mature. I understood that the panic, that thing of 3 hours and you've been in class for 3 months, what is this thing being reduced into 3 hours? And it's not even a good indicator, in my opinion, as to whether you've grasped the concept or the principle of law that you now need to apply. So if a client walked in, I used to ask myself, so if a client walked in now, I'm going to tell them, go to page this of this textbook, and this was the question in the exam. It didn't work for me. It really didn't work for me. And I said, if you can be testing me, teach me a principle, then test me. Like, make me do an essay or a paper, or do some role playing in a sort of classroom scenario. that makes more sense to me, because then I learn the lesson because I've applied it. So I'm a very practical person. I don't like theory very much because I don't think it helps. But it's necessary to understand where things came from. So I think I didn't do as well, obviously, in my first year. And I think when I then got my report card, I was like, wow, this is not... I'm not going to pass this course if I continue like this. So I think part of it was seeing the reality of how bad the numbers were. And I had done well in high school. So I'm not like a super clever chick. I'm just, I have to read. I have to read and work hard. And then once I understood my learning process, I also had an experience with one of my friends in my dorm in the first year. We went out the way college people go out the first year. Then you come in the morning. And then we go and play pool because we had a pool table. And then we had coffee, and then we showered and we went to school. We had not slept. So of course the first hour, you know, you're writing, then the pen starts going down this way. Then now you tell the other person, listen, you write the first 30 minutes. Actually, let me just close my eyes. And it was so hard. That guy scored an A.
Wow.
And I'm like, 1-3 with you. And he's like, me, things just stick. They
just flow.
I was like, hey, we are not the same.
No.
And I'm so glad I learned that in my first year and not later, because Mukul was a genius, to be honest, but fun. Like, he wasn't like these nerdy people. He just grasped things quickly. So he could be asleep. But when we got back at 4, as guys went to play pool, he went to read. And at that point, I'm like, what are you reading at 4 in the morning? That's staying in your head. I don't understand, but he was that kind of learner. So I understood that people learn things differently. And it's not a competition. Like, you know, he would help me understand his process, but it wouldn't work for me. So I'm like, okay, you do you. So then when I see him out with us, I'm like, oh, this guy is cheating us. So I go and read first, and I'm like, okay, let's go out.
So fast forward, then you finish university.
I finished
in
university.
the meantime, are you doing gigs? I mean, what's happening with your creative side?
Yes, I'm singing. I've formed like a little group of girls that I found, one from Nigeria, one from Uganda, myself, and I think one was like a spoken word artist. Like, we tried to do some things. We met some other guys again on the prowl in the night. We were dancing, and do you remember a house party? Do you remember the movie House Party? Where like Kid and Play would be like dancing, and then they meet what was the chick's name? Tisha Campbell, whatever her character was called, and they would do like choreography. So we were those chicks. We'd go and learn choreography, and then we'd go and dance in the club, and we'd be there from 9 because it was free and we were students, so we had to go to the club early. But then on the way back to the dorm one day, we met 2 guys who we were dancing with in the club, and they were actually walking the same way we were walking. And it turns out that one was doing a music production course part-time, and he was doing some other, I guess, security work or something. So we started talking about music, and he's like, oh, I've got these projects coming up, and I think I might need some voices. Would you be down? I'm like, did we go to a studio? Yes! I was like, yeah. So most of the time, the studio sessions were late. So it just meant, again, now organizing my time, getting my study in and my assignments in, and then we'd go to studio maybe like 2 or 3 in the morning, because that's when the students had access to the studio, because it wasn't being used for commercial use. And we would sit there and record stuff on cassette tapes. So yeah, I was doing as much as I could. The one thing I didn't do a lot of was acting. Acting was weird. It was too much. Uni. Yeah, I don't remember acting at all. But music was easy. My friend Rolake was playing in the worship team at her church. So she'd be like, oh, wait, you know, I'm doing something next Sunday. Do you guys want to come? So because we'd been doing things for the Afro-Caribbean Society things, she'd be like, oh, let's go. So as many opportunities as possible, I would grab them. I even did one at Warwick in Coventry. One of my girlfriends, Diana, was doing something, and she used to lead worship at Parklands Baptist before we had met, before we went to university. And so she ended up in Coventry, and she was doing something for her Africa Society talent show thing, and she asked me to come down from London and sing with her, and we wrote a song that's actually on my album.
Which one is it?
It's Right Direction.
Yeah,
we wrote that with
when did you start writing? At what point?
I guess that first year, 98, 99 was probably the first time I penned an original work with Diana. So, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Gosh,
Okay.
that's how many years ago now?
20, how many?
2009.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's
2009.
30 years ago.
Yeah. You know, when I first met you, June, I was this shady child from only girls only boarding school, stressed. I'm like, I've gone to this
All boys. I was so excited that there was only boys.
Me, I was terrified, June.
Really?
Completely terrified. In fact, I remember crossing the quadrangle where there's all these guys around.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jesus. Every time I had to cross from one end to the other, for sweating bullets.
Yeah, I was now
June was this flower that used to just dance and hi. She knew everybody in school. I'm like, what the heck? I want to go. And she literally held my hand. I was this lost chicken in a crowd of savages.
This one, can you imagine?
And you literally, what is it that you saw?
I don't know. I just thought, oh, she's tall, I'm short, we'll be like Laurel and
you were
Hardy.
so popular.
Because, so you know what was interesting about Saints? Saints was like, I'd come from, so before we were always in international schools, like that had like co-ed, yeah? So it was boys and girls. And when we moved back home, we went to this all-girls school and my brain was refusing. I said, what do you mean there are no boys? I remember asking my father, this is not going to work well for me. We must have a conversation.
And what did he say?
No, you're going there. Okay. And I said, and then we had to wear green socks, still here. Yeah. So bad. I'm like, which boy is going to look at my legs now? My decision-making process was very simple at that age. So when I got the chance to come for the IB program, and I saw the numbers, okay, it was a bit overwhelming, but it was like interesting because I realized very quickly I didn't come from a school where we had like cliques or niches, you know what I mean? Like, so all the people from school X would sort of hover together. Yeah. And I came from Rina Hicks by myself. So I didn't have I didn't come with like other students from my school. Yeah. And I think the girls from Canada had come together. Everyone had like at least 4 or 5 were admitted from their school, and I was by myself. So I realized very quickly, this is going to be strange if I don't start at least trying to get to know everybody. So the first group of people I met were the boys at Saints. Like, it was like day one, I think, when we went for orientation, the people who said hi to me were the guys. So from that day, I think I started talking to the girls like much later because I'd already like found my friends from that point of view. So it was just different. I think for me, my interaction with guys has always been very different. They've been like older brothers, and I think they're very forthcoming in terms of like, they don't mince their words, and I really appreciated that. I appreciated them just being honest and saying things as they were. Yeah. So it made it easier for me, and then I just thought, these are just a whole bunch of 1,300 students in that school.
And like 20 girls. Okay, we were more.
Like 100. Yeah. So the ratio, I know this ratio, I did the maths, it was 13 to 1. Yes. So I branded all of my guys. I branded all the June guys. Yeah. Don't look at any other boys. No, but they were really cool. Okay. I think those were probably two of the best years. So did
Saints and the experience in St. Mary's have any impact on your journey?
I think so. I think so. Those 2 years were like even maybe better than uni for me. Like, I felt like I'd already had my 2 years. I'd had my 2 good years of transitioning.
Transitioning from?
From sort of like high school. Because, you know, it was a bridger course, right? Yes, you're in a high school environment, but we'd finished our O-levels, and most of my classmates from Green Acres went straight to university. At 16, 17, they went straight, and then we stayed behind to do the IB program. And I think it was exactly what I needed personally. I was too all over the place. I don't think I would have passed university if I'd gone immediately. Okay. So I appreciated it helping me just interact with different people and understand who I am in those kind of settings, and whatever leadership skills I then gleaned were from there.
Head girl. She was head girl.
Yeah, of 1,300 boys. Yes. So they will remember. And then also they were very big on sports and creativity. So I did a lot of the school musicals, and I got a chance to write school plays. And then do music festivals. All those things, I think, for me, just felt perfect, because IB's aim is to churn out well-rounded human beings into the world. So for me, it was a perfect was a perfect prescription for me.
So you're confusing for me.
Yeah.
Because you're head girl.
Yeah.
You're a musician. You're a thespian. You're organized. You're structured. You're an artist.
Yeah.
Like they don't
how
go
do
together.
those things work?
Is it your father who said, "Wewe, history of Ati"? I mean, how? How did you have this? Yeah.
Well, I think I have to credit my folks for doing one thing. Both of them did this in their own way.
Okay.
We were exposed to work at a very early age.
How old were you?
The first time, it was even before Saints. We would go and do work with my mom at the UN.
Okay.
And we would go and help her like organize her. She's a super administrator.
Yeah, she's
like
very talented.
Super administrator. And so we would learn how to file things, how to organize things, how to type.
So from when you were in high school?
From the age of maybe like 13.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
And then when we finished Green Acres, my dad was like, so you're going to stay in the house for 8 months doing what? No. Enter the car, we're going to the office. And then he sit at the reception, make coffee, file those things, go and print this, go sit in this meeting, take minutes. So immediately, school was out, we were in an office setting. Whether it was my dad's office or my mom's office, we were learning how to do things as opposed to go and read about this thing. We were doing it.
Interesting.
So I think that started to maybe form a habit in terms of how to organize things, and just how to do, mostly implement things. Like I think you learn how the practice, the theory of it, and then you learn how to do it. So mom would say, if you're filing this thing, you go and you punch holes and then you put it in the file and then it's crooked.
Yeah. She's like,
She's like, now what have you done? What is that? Come, I show you. So she'll show you. You're supposed to fold it in the middle and you're like, this is how, okay. And then you forget about it because you're not in that setting. And then 10 years later at your first job,
naturally.
it's so natural.
And guys like, hi.
And I'm like, what are you doing? That's what you're supposed to do. And I'm the one teaching, the other administrators at that. Yeah. And I think that probably is probably the reason why well, at least in my case, I'm able to think in that way, in spite of the fact that I am still a creative who is a little bit all over the place with my creative process. But I've understood that my creative process generates a business a product at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that link for me is really what the sweet spot is, because I allow myself to go through whatever the creative process is, as disorganized and as unstructured as it is, and then I ask myself, do I want it to stay there? Did I just do this because it made me happy? Or can this be something that also then maybe generates some form of income, or can then be shared with audience X? And if it's going to be shared with audience X, what do I need to do to make it into a thing, like an actual? So now from the theory of it to practically going into a studio and recording it, or setting up a band rehearsal and saying, guys, I need to teach you this thing that's in my head, and since I can't play any instruments, you guys need to make it sound the way it's sounding in my head, so go. So that was the thing. Like I'm like, I want to perform this at the next show, but then I can't just stand up on the mic and do it by myself, so I need to have a process. I need to have a plan. Yeah, so I think that was what it was. Like, I need to communicate this thing, and the channel to communicate it has to be structured.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
I want to talk about the first couple of gigs, because there's a lesson I learned from you where business is concerned.
Wow.
In extension from your parents.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that next.
Okay.
You are watching June Gachui, the Yummy Music Mama, and I am Rina Hicks. This is All Access. God bless you, and subscribe if you haven't. Bye.